Hey guys, welcome back to another YouTube tutorial. In this tutorial, we're going to create a simple local chat application in Python programming language. So this is kind of a demo of what we're going to be building. I have opened up 4 instances of my application. So let me actually run them in order to show you how they are going to look like. So first of all, we will have such a small window that appears and that asks us to input our username. So let me actually run all of those 4 instances to show you how our chat functionality is going to work. So first of all, we have to input our username. So let's say here Maverick. Maverick is going to be our first user, and we have another window opened up. Then let's say Jason as the second user. Then as a third user, let's say a girl's name, for example, Alice. Then fifth name is going to be something like Alex, I don't know, some random name. And as you can see already here, such messages are appearing. Jason joined chat, Alice joined chat, Alex joined chat, etc. So we can type here a message so that it is displayed across all the instances of our application. So we can say here, hello guys, exclamation mark. And as you can see, that message is going to be displayed in all instances of our application. In the background, I already have my server running, my socket server running. So that server is receiving that message and it is broadcasting that message across all instances of my application. So I can say here, my name is Jason or something like that. How are you guys? Like that. I am great, thanks, something like that. And this user can say, what, this app is really cool. Okay, and this was implemented in Python programming language, something like that. And you got the idea. We can freely communicate in this chat application of ours. And in this tutorial, we will create such application from scratch. For the chat functionality, we will use something called socket. So in this tutorial, you'll learn everything you need to know about socket programming in Python. In our front end, in order to create that GUI, we will use Tkinter, CustomTkinter to be precise, because we want to have some nicely styled modern UI, and CustomTkinter provides us that implementation. The plain Tkinter is quite outdated and not very stylish. That's why I decided to use CustomTkinter in this tutorial. In my previous tutorial, in my opinion, in some kind of other previous tutorial, I used TTK Bootstrap. I demonstrated you how you use TTK Bootstrap, but in this tutorial we're going to be focusing on CustomTkinter, which is yet another cool extension wrapper of Tkinter. So yeah, for that, let's open up the terminal and create our virtual environment. It is always a best practice to create virtual environments for your Python projects to keep things organized and clean. That's why I'm going to create one for me as well. So Python venv, not -m, venv, and now it is created. Then I need to activate that virtual environment by saying venv bin and activate. I'm running on Linux, that's why my command is like that, but if you're on Windows, your command is going to be a bit different. You have to check that out on the internet. It's not going to be very difficult. You can find that out on your own. So we will have 3 files here. The first file is going to be server, and the next file is going to be client. The client that we actually going to run is just going to contain that CustomTkinter code. Then third one is going to be our settings.py file. It is going to contain some general settings for our application, like port, IP, etc. So yeah, let's start off with server. Here, first of all, I need to import socket, which is already pre-installed Python library, so you don't have to install that. Then I am going to import threading. We'll use multiple threading in this tutorial to be able to not automatically, but simultaneously receive some messages from users and send those messages to users. And then I'm going to import everything from my settings. From settings, import everything. Then I'm going to create a class server. Then dev init here, init, then self.server. I'm going to create my server, which is going to be of socket.af inet. We have different kinds of sockets. For example, sockets for Bluetooth. Where is that? AF Bluetooth. AF, for example, bridge, internet, some other stuff. You can explore that on your own. We had something related to Bluetooth as well. Bluetooth, I don't know where is it right now, but the one that we're going to be using here is called inet, AF inet, which basically lets us communicate over the internet. Then the second argument is going to be the type of socket. We have two types of sockets. First one is TCP socket, TCP, then the second one is UDP. There is a slight difference between those two server types, but we're going to be using TCP server in our tutorial. You can look up the difference between those two types of sockets on the internet and learn that on your own, but basically TCP socket is much more reliable but a bit slower, but UDP server is less reliable but faster. So UDP servers are usually used for streaming, for live video communication in applications like Zoom, what else? Discord, etc. But TCP servers are much more reliable and are used in chatting systems, file sharing applications, etc. So we'll be using TCP server in this tutorial. So for that we can say socket.sock stream. Yeah. To make UDP server you need to say dgram here, but we're going to be sticking to sock stream here. Then I'm going to say server.bind, and here I need to provide my IP address and port of my server. Those two variables I am going to create in my settings. So port is going to be my local host, which is 127.0.0.1. Then port is going to be 4 nines. Okay, then I'm going to say self.server.listen for it to start listening. Then I'll have a list of all my clients that are currently connected to my server. So self.clients equals to an empty list at the beginning. I want to create a class for my client. So class client dev init. It is going to have some parameters. Username is going to be the first parameter, then address of it, string, then socket. Its socket will be socket.socket. Then I'm going to assign those to attributes, to respective attributes. Address equals to address, then self.sock equals to sock, like that. So next up I want to create my threading. Threading.thread. Basically I'll have two functions here. The first one will be receive, then the second one will be handle. Def handle self. I will create a first threading called target, then self.handle and start, like that. In my handle I want to have an infinitely running while loop. Then inside of that while loop I will constantly wait for connection, for incoming connection from some clients. So client connection equals to and address of that client is going to be equal to self.server.accept, and then I will receive a username from that client. So client connection.receive 1025 bytes, then decode that information. We have to always decode the incoming information, the incoming data from the user, because that comes as a byte. Also, when we want to send some data, we have to always encode that string, because we need to send data in bytes. So here we can print and say new connection from, and you can provide this address here. Then self.broadcast, I'll broadcast to all the users that this new user has joined the chat. Username joined the chat. And let's quickly create that broadcast method. Broadcast, if I can type it correctly, then we will receive a message here, message, which is going to be of type string. Then after broadcasting that, I want to create a new instance of this client. So let's say client equals to client, then username, and then address, then client connection as my socket. Then self.clients that append this newly created client. Then I'm going to create a new separate thread. New thread equals to thread. Then target of it will be self.receive. Then I'll pass some arguments, one argument actually, which is going to be my client, the current client that I'm working with. Then I will start this thread, start like that. Let's wrap this actually in try catch statement because it can potentially result in an error. So accept exception as E. I will say print first of all server error, then provide my error, then say break to break out of this infinitely running loop. At the bottom I can say if name equals to main server equals to my server, like that. Then let's go ahead and implement those two methods, receive and broadcast. In my receive, I will similarly have an infinitely running while loop, which is going to have try catch statement inside of it as well. So except we'll do something, some error handling mechanism. Message equals to client dot, I'll receive client here, client, which is going to be socket, not socket but client dot sock dot receive 1024, then decode. I'll constantly listen to some messages that are incoming from this particular client, and when I receive a message I will broadcast that message to all the users. So I can say here self.broadcast of client.username and then provide the message. Then I can print this message on the server side to see actually what kind of message we received and what the heck is even going on in my server. So received some kind of message from what? From client.username. Alright, in the accept part I'm going to break this current thread by terminating this while loop, because when I enter this accept clause, it means that this particular client has left the chat, so you can close the connection with that user and remove this client from the self.clients list. And this is going to be a list of clients, so I can annotate that for convenience. So I want to print out here, first things first, client.username, I left the chat, some kind of info message. Then I can say here self.broadcast broadcast f client.username, I left the chat. And maybe I need to say self.clients.remove before that broadcasting. Remove client, then client.sock.close to close the connection, and finally I can say return here to exit out of this method. Not method, but while loop to be precise. Finally, in my broadcast function, I wanna send that message to all the clients that I have. So that's going to be extremely straightforward. I just need to iterate over all clients that I have. For client, in clients, client.sock client.sock.send message.encode. I have to encode this message because I need to send it in bytes. That's the essential part here that you don't have to forget about. Now that should be it for my server part. Now let's go ahead and quickly implement our client functionality, which is going to be a little bit more sophisticated compared to what I have written in my server side. So here, first of all, I have to but install CustomTkinter. So let's say pip install CustomTkinter. Let's quickly install that, then clear it, then import custom. No, that is not going to be giving me that hint, although I have installed CustomTkinter. So let me go ahead and reopen VS Code so that that change is applied. I don't know why my VS Code is like that, but I constantly receive such problem. Alright, so I have reopened my VS Code and this should import. Import CustomTkinter as CTK. As you saw, I installed CustomTkinter, but my VS Code didn't see that I installed CustomTkinter. That's why it wasn't giving me that auto-completion hint. So I quickly restarted my application and that change was applied. So here I want to import socket, import threading as usual. Then from settings, I want to import everything. Just only two constants, yeah. Then I want to have the username, which is going to be empty string initially, and I'll basically have two instances of my CustomTkinter window, which is first one of which is going to be ask username, which will ask the user for its username, ctk dev init. I don't need that. Init, just self. Then I need to say super.init. Then self.title will be username. Self.geometry will be 300 by 200. Then self.resizable will be false, like that. Then self.username variable is going to be ctk.string_var. Value, the default value of it is going to be initially equal to an empty string. Then I will have some widgets here. The first one of which is going to be entry, ctk entry. Then the master root is going to be my window, which is self. Then text variable is going to be self.username variable. Then what? That should be it. I want to then pack my entry by saying expand to truth for it to take up all the available space, then fill x. Then the last UI element is going to be my button, ctk button. Self is going to be my master, then text will be submit, and command will be self.submit method, which I'm going to be creating right now, self here. And I'll say pass here for now, then button.pack and fill x. I don't want to say expand true here. Then let's say self.main loop to actually show up this window. Then in my submit, I want to say first of all global username to track this username, so that when I reference username, it does not create a local username variable. Instead, I want it to affect my global username variable. That's why I'm saying global username here. Then if self.username username variable.get equals to an empty string, I want to say I want to show some message box from tkinter.messageBox import show error. So if that's the case, I'm going to show the error. The title of it is going to be error. Then message is going to be username not specified, like that. Then return. Otherwise, if my username is specified, I'm going to say username equals to self.username variable.get. Then self.destroy to kill this application, not application but window. And after that, I will be creating another instance of my Tkinter window, which is going to be holding the functionality of chat. So it is going to be called client, and as usual, it is going to inherit ctk.ctk. In it here, self, then super init, like that, and self the title of it is going to be chat app self dot geometry 600 by 500, self dot resizable will be false. Then I want to create a client connection here, client connection using sockets. So self dot connection will be equal to socket dot socket. In this case, I don't want to create a new server instance like this. I just want to connect to an existing server, so that the logic is going to be a bit different. So socket inet here to specify that I want to connect to internet. I want to work with internet connection, not any kind of bridge, any kind of Bluetooth, anything else. I just want to work with internet. Then socket.af, not af but sock stream like that. Then self.connection.connect to my IP, then port that are coming from the settings. So after that, self.connection.send username.encode. I want to send the current client's username right away, because in my server I want to instantly access this username, because I want to append that to my client's list. That's why I'm sending it right away. Then I'm going to have my input variable ctk.string var, value will be empty string, then a list of messages, list string, just in case I need it. In this current application I don't need those messages, but just in case you want to expand the functionality of this application, you will need those messages perhaps. Then I want to build all the UI elements, widgets to be precise. Then receive thread equals to threading dot thread, and target equals to self dot receive. Then let me create actually those two functions, receive self, then build widgets, pass. Then I want to say receive thread dot start right away, and after starting that I will say main loop. Alright, in my build widgets function method, I want to create one large scrollable frame, which is going to be CTK scrollable frame. In plain Tkinter we don't have such scrollable frame. In CTK we have this custom implementation of scrollable frame, and that's why it is readily available here for us and we can use it. So the master is going to be self, then label anchor is going to be east, because I want my inner elements to be aligned to the left side, which is east. Then self.frame.pack expand true fill will be both. Next up, I want to create another plain frame, CTK frame, which is going to contain my my input field and button on the right side of it. For that I need some kind of container. Input field dot pack fill will be x. Then my entry field will be ctk entry. Then input field is going to be its master. Then text variable will be this text variable that we have created, input variable, and that should be it for my entry. Then self.entry.pack side left expand true fill both like that. Button is going to be my last widget, ctk button, input field, then text will be send, command will be self.send message. So let's copy that and create that function send message, and button needs to be packed. Pack site left fill both. Also, I forgot one thing here. In my ask username window, I want to add padding here. So here pad X will be I don't know, 6, pad Y will be a little bit less, 4 maybe, pad X 6, pad Y 4, maybe 3, let's go with 3. So what now? We need to implement send message receive function, then yeah, those two functions. In my send message, I want to say message equals to self.entry.get, not entry but input variable.get. Then if not message, I will say just return, because we need a message for us to be able to send that to our server. Otherwise, if it is present, I want to say self.connection.send message.encode, self.entry.delete 0 from 0 to CTK, and I want to clear all the content of my entry. In my receive, I want to create a loop, an infinitely running loop, which is going to which is going to take or handle all the incoming messages from the server. So for example, in my broadcast, I'm sending messages to all my clients, and this receive function, this receive method will accept all those incoming messages. So yeah, here I will say try pass exception as E, print error receiving, and provide my error message, self.connection.close, then break maybe. Here in my try block, I want to say message equals to self.connection.receive 1024 decode, then if message, I want to say self.after 0 milliseconds, self.add message to UI. There should be 2 S's here, not 3. Then provide my message. I am calling this function yet another function which is responsible for adding this new message label to my this CTK scrollable frame. If I will try to add it right away, it may potentially result in some kind of errors. That's why I am moving that to another method and calling it by saying after, which is safer. So the dev add message to UI self, then my message what. Here I want to create my label widget, ctk label, self.frame text will be this message, and then wrap length will be my actual width of my window, which is 600, right? 600. Then anchor will be west, justify will be to the left side, justify left, like that. Then label.pack fill all x or all the horizontal space, and pad x will be 10, pad y will be 3. Then self.messages that append my message. I'm appending this message to this list. Then here I need to say self.frame.parent canvas.y view move to 1 0. This is a logic to automatically scroll that widget to the bottom. This is optional, but you can totally abandon that part, but I decided to add that part for my scroll bar to automatically scroll to the bottom. So finally we can call this main block if name equals to main. First of all, I will say ask username equals to ask username. Then I can print the received username, then create this client window finally. Let's go. So yeah, that should be it for this application. Now let's go ahead and run first of all my server. So I want to say here's python server.py, and it is now running. Now I want to create another terminal here, and here I want to run my client, python client dot what client.py. Let's go. And I need to activate my virtual environment source venv bin activate. Then okay, now I have my username window appeared. Then let's create one more terminal instance, then say source venv bin activate. What the source venv bin activate, then clear python client.py, and I have here it. Alright, I have my two windows, and let's enter the username here, Maverick, and let me open up the server here so that I can see my server messages. So Maverick, let's click, and it says new connection from this address. Then let's say here, what kind of names do we have? Let's say what, Steve, maybe Steve, yeah. And here we have Steve joined the chat, and let's input some messages here. Hello Steve, and that message appears here, and we have here received hello Steve from Maverick. And let's write something else. How are you, dude? Send it, and let's answer to that question. I am alright. What about you? Question. And I'm indeed receiving those messages, as you can see. I'm alright, what about you, from Steve. So yeah, this is a comprehensive chat application GUI that we have implemented in Python programming language. It was quite lengthy but quite interesting and useful project, and through this tutorial you learned a lot about sockets, about threadings in Python programming language, how to split your project implementation across multiple files. You learned how to create UI elements, UI widgets in CustomTkinter, and by this you learned how to create a simple yet pragmatic chat application in Python programming language. So yeah, I hope this tutorial was helpful to you. If so, let me know by hitting the like button and leaving a comment in the comment section down below. Also, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. It really helps me to stay motivated to create more programming tutorials in the future for free. Also, you can write in the comment section down below what kind of projects or tutorials you want me to create next. Other than that, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.